But now that we have your attention, um, I can watch that video, and it is actually on a loop. Um, the Chinese embassy to France posted that um, this morning, this morning our time, and it's been a little bit of topic of conversation in and around the internet. And it's the Chinese Rockettes, Mark. That's exactly right. And I just thought I like the music. I'm told that's from a video game. I wouldn't know, but I just it's mesmerizing. I can watch it long time. Um, so we thought we'd try to get your attention, and I posted it in response to some Ukrainian propaganda about OnlyFans models in trenches in Donetsk, and said, well, Chinese call and raise. So that's where we are. And welcome. I'm sorry we're late. I have to apologize. I think most of you know I don't like being late, but I got caught in a Windows update that I didn't realize we were doing, and it took me a little while to sort of get through all that and get here. And so we're a little late, but we're not at the 13-minute mark, which means we beat CFC today. So that's my standard. That's what we're working on, and we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to start off with a little bit of economics. I mean, this show started off by talking about asymmetry of risk and fat tails, and so we're going to continue that a little bit in the context of economic outlook with the Fed's decision today. We're going to talk a little bit about some other things economically that I'd like you to keep your eye on. And then we're going to go and talk a little bit about foreign policy faux pas. And man, there's more there. I had to cut stuff out to sort of squeeze this in, because we seem to be falling all over ourselves from a foreign policy perspective. Almost in every theater that I can point to. Matter of fact, I can't point to anything that we're doing, in my estimation, right, and more importantly, in the rest of the world's estimation, that we're doing correctly. And if we have time after that, we'll talk a little bit about the mayor of Miami has announced he's going to run for president. So we're
Oh, Stan, you're muted. There you go.
Like 2016. Much like
I see Doliosis is catching.
Yeah, with the 16 candidates on the stage and Trump in the middle, just taking shots at all of them. So that it should be fun. Should be interesting.
They're trying to set up they're trying to set up a food fight.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And I think if you've got a legitimate chance, you want to run for president, do so. I think a number of the Republican candidates are doing this as a career move, and I don't mean politically, I mean financially. I think John Kasich taught everybody that you could make 10, 15 million bucks running for president with no chance of being elected. Jill Stein and some others have confirmed that, and so we are where we are. And we'll have to just, two men enter, one man leaves. So we'll see what happens. Jim, how are you today? I know you spent the day in D.C. You want to share any observations of our nation's capital today?
Yeah, the hard thing for me in D.C. now is, you come out of a meeting at noon and you're on your way somewhere and there's just nobody on the street. And I just, I feel terrible for the restaurants that struggled through COVID, survived, and, half the population of the district doesn't come back to work. And so it's a bit of a wasteland. And it's just a strange environment. The leadership shows up, but, rank and file doesn't seem to be dragging their asses back to the district. So I'm just not sure how that's going to operate culturally. I had conversations a couple months ago with a buddy who is a senior person at one of the big insurance companies, and I get a top 3 slot. And I said, "How you doing?" I said, "Can't believe you're at work." And he laughed and he said, "Yeah." He said, "We're up here. We've got our 3-4 floors to the high rise down in the southern part of Manhattan." And he said, "There are 3 of us in the building. It's the chairman, the CEO, and me." And I started laughing. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, somebody's got to come in, right? You have to have signatures, right? So you have to do that stuff." He said, "But nobody else feels obligated to show up." And I'm just finding this pattern of nonchalant business to be very interesting. So I'm just watching things skate down the ice, and closure rates are falling for people, and it's just hard to get people to show up and be serious. That's my observation.
Yeah, I don't think that there's big chunks of the rest of the world that aren't quite operating that way. And
No,
so,
that's true.
um,
The French just got a leg up. The Qataris giving jets to Indonesia for free. I mean, it's an interesting world. Everybody's swapping things. Nobody's making new stuff. They're just swapping it.
we're back to a barter economy again.
Yeah, exactly. On a national level, counter trade is with us.
Yeah, yeah. And even our military's having continued problems. I saw that the Air Force is not going to accept any of the new whatever block this is of F-35s.
No, they just said no.
They just said no. There's a test you have to pass in terms of the electronic system. You haven't passed it yet, and sorry, do not pass go. Do not collect $35 million a copy or whatever the ridiculous number is, and so we are putting a match to our military stores in the Ukraine. I guess we're okay because we're selling some of it to Taiwan, but we can't replace any of it.
Yeah, the Germans came out today and said they have the capacity to make all sorts of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Did you see the military pronouncement? It wasn't Thyssen, but it was one of the German munitions guys came out and said, we can do 600,000-700,000 155 millimeter rounds. Well, we can do all the consumables you want, and there's going to be this move in Europe to monetize rearming.
Wait. Did I miss something? Arbeit macht frei. Is there something going on from a labor perspective?
Yeah, I was going to say, because wasn't this like 2 days ago or something where they said that they might have to shut down various industries to make sure people don't freeze this winter?
Yeah. It was not too long ago, man.
Yeah, look, I mean, there was a list on Twitter this morning of European contributions to the Ukraine. That's ex-US, right? From the Czechs and the Poles and the Baltic dwarfs and what have you, and some of it from the Germans. And it looks like somebody went to the Goodwill store, right, with a shopping list, and there's or TJ Maxx or Marshalls or one of these places, and it's we have 2 MI8s. You can have that. We have a bunch of socks that don't match. You can have that. I mean, it's
everybody's positioning for the redevelopment bids.
Yeah.
They want to get in line for reconstruction and all the happy.
They speak Russian?
They can pretend.
Yeah.
No, they have AI for that.
Yeah, and so the other observation on Ukraine, and then we'll get back into the show here in just a minute. But the other observation on Ukraine is Zelensky is moaning about everything, and that if they were doing any good at all with their super big, really big, super secret offensive, we'd be hearing nothing but that nonstop. And so we've tried to shake the tree by saying we need help with the flood. We've tried to shake the tree by saying we need help against the Russians. And now they're shaking the tree, saying that their friends and allies need to sanction more people who are selling electronic components to the Russians to make Shahed 156s or whatever they are. and it's just like the whole world must bow down to Zelensky in Ukraine, and I don't think that's going to happen. So we'll see. But I think he's in trouble. All right, let's before we get too far behind, Watcher, can we pull up first the $10 super chat and let's talk about what is on
Sure.
Fatty Slow Boy's mind. Good evening, his favorite duo, the Hong Kong gentleman.
No, I'm chopped liver. See.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, we hope not to disappoint, Fatty Slow Boy, and stick around. Let us know how we're doing. And I think the other is the Space Kissinger. This is a new name. I haven't seen this name before.
I like it.
It's now the WF Stott Machfrei. Yeah, the get in the pods. I think that's probably right. The WF has gone kind of quiet, which has me a little bit worried. And that's particularly true now that George Soros has handed over his empire to his son Alec.
Who is a real piece of work.
Yeah. And that's probably good for a segment on another show.
Absolutely.
But he was not very stealth in his rounds to prominent Democrats in the United States just prior to this announcement. So buckle up, because I think we got more incoming from the Open Society Foundation, and that's not going to be a good thing. Watcher, what's new with you? Are you continue to conquer commerce?
Yeah, out there? we're trying. We're doing our best. We appreciate all the support we've been getting from people who send us little tips of the hat, letting us know that they came from either here or the other show. So we appreciate you, and we'll make sure we get you taken care of. But apart from that, we're doing as best we can. We're in the scary phase between when you invest in a whole bunch of product and people promise to pay for it, but don't actually give you the money yet. So I'm gonna go shake them down. We'll see. But I'm quite excited for this first video. It was well done, in my opinion.
Go ahead.
All right, so let's start off with some blatant Russian propaganda.
Yeah, if you haven't seen this is brilliant.
No, that's bull. That's nonsense. We need some fresh ideas. Better, stronger, and effective. Oh, God, I'm so tired.
The International.
The last bit is almost South Park worthy. That's RT, and that was done with artificial intelligence, I believe. Keep me honest on that, but I think it said that it was generated on a neural network with artificial intelligence.
Yes, so. Yeah. They said that up front.
And it was pretty darn good, and I suspect that it's not as good as they could have done it, because they didn't. They wanted to sort of put us on notice as to what they actually could do.
Actually, can I give I've heard that from a lot of people, but can I give a more almost scarier mimetic reason that I think that they understand us better than I would hope they would?
What's that?
I think mimetically they understand that if they tried to make it real, it would then be something that you could expose as, oh, it's a fake. See, look, they were trying to trick you. Whereas if you purposefully make it fake enough, like Trump does with a lot of his videos, where
True.
it's,
Yeah, that's
you
a
know
good
what I mean,
point. That's a very good
then
point.
suddenly it becomes humorous.
Yeah, yeah, and so you can't be held up to Russian psyop like the Hunter laptop and all sorts of other things that we've managed to live through and believe even for a while, or the the Trump P tapes and all sorts of things like that. So
Oh Lord, yeah.
yeah, you see, you forget after a while. Your mind is trying to keep you sane by washing that stuff down the drain. But anyhow, that's pretty nice stuff, and it's very funny, and I'm sure we're going to see more of that, particularly going into a campaign season that promises to be unique. Let's pull up Hunch's $20. I want to stay current on this. Jim,
What do you-
why don't you read this for us?
Yeah, I like that.
Watcher, you read it.
All right, I got it. Hunch Dirty Roof for $20 says, I'll keep beating the same drum I have for the past year. If China is our true foe, why are we not doing more to help the revolutionaries in Burma fight a Chinese-backed junta? Bet if they got AT-4s, they wouldn't end up in Mexico. Well, I mean, it's a decent point. I can speculate, but I suspect these two gentlemen have a better handle on it than I do.
Jim, I know what the answer is, and I suspect you do. You want to try?
I just don't. I'm going to ask Watcher if the AT4 has a handle. I don't think so.
It's a little fabric handle, yeah.
So it's like a handbag. The difficulty in dealing in Burma is the same difficulty that dealing in that part of Asia has always been. Is there are 25 factions, all associated with some other activity. So you have Islam on the Bangladesh side now, which is subject to great international scrutiny. You have the Karens and all the other tribes that you have to deal with on the Thai side. You have the narcotics trade. You have the Burmese activities that the government does out of Rangoon. You got the people up on the Chinese border. You've got the ethnic Chinese segments on the Chinese border. It comes down to where everybody gets their rice bowl filled, and it's just hard for a foreign entity that has scrutiny by the media to play in the region without a lot of blowback. So people tend to stay the hell out. It just doesn't look good. So it's hard to get a bureaucrat to make that decision, would be my guess.
There's definitely an element to that I could see, but at the same time, we're about ready to back the Taliban against my brain's not functioning.
IRGC.
So yeah. So it's I mean, I don't know. I personally think it has a lot more to do with what most problems that we have come down to, which is elite capture.
The difficulty in these places is there's the only elite are the guys who control.
Oh, I meant on our side. Like nobody on our side has the willingness to give out the AT-4s because they don't view China as the actual enemy. They view China as a competitor who happens to line their pockets whenever they really need it.
Yeah, I just find it very interesting how we're willing to give away a lot of stuff. We almost seem concerned about selling it. The money is coming through non-traditional channels. I'm much more akin to, if you want to buy something, buy it. And I'm just not sure why we don't do the merchant of death thing very well anymore. We did for a long time.
I think that our liberal establishments are burned by Aung San Suu Kyi and her downfall. And I think with her not there, there's nobody in Burma that they can figure out in terms of who could be a partner that isn't going to blow up in their face, as you said, Jim, in terms of some either ethnicity or connection to the narcotics trade or what have you. And additionally, I just think that the Burmese military has a lock on the country. I mean, I can remember trying to get to Burma to have commercial talks 30 years ago, and pulling a visa to get to Burma was hard at that particular point. I just think Burma is one of those backwater places that nobody's figured out what their interest is. It's tough to do anything. The Chinese can make it work because of their proximity and because of long-standing relationships and alignment sort of in their view with the military. But I think if you think we're ineffective in a place like Afghanistan, try Burma. That's not going to work well. And you see that all the hand-wringing about the Rohingya went nowhere, right?
Well, it's the master and commander. It's the lesser of two evils, right?
True.
The place is chock full of things that are unseemly, and the government is a strong, centralized thing, and they maintain a very strong central control. But things at the edge, if it's too hard, they'll just kind of ignore it, or they'll take kickbacks from it. They'll kind of coexist with it. If it becomes too problematic or too expensive to go extinguish it, they'll choose when they go extinguish it. And, it's been an ongoing story. It's the never ending story. And if you look at what's going on now in ASEAN, you've got a really interesting dynamic with the Thais and the Chinese. You've got a really interesting dynamic with the Cambodians and the Chinese. So you've got spoilers in the deal. I mean, here, Fatty Slowboy, non-lethal aid. I have no idea what that would be.
Blankets.
Yeah. Who knows what's going to go on in there? And I'm sure we've got a bunch of Yale grads running around in the border, and we'll see what they come up with.
Well, we talked about this afternoon. We've lost the Thai military. We, the United States, we've lost the Thai military.
And they were some of the best of friends for
absolutely
30, 40 years, 50 years. So Cobra Gold is no longer shiny.
Nope. Not at all. Not at all. And Charlie Collins asks the poignant question, why has the U.S. ever considered minding its own business? No, sir, we have not. Not for 80 years. We haven't. Despite Washington's warnings, despite Eisenhower's warnings, we have made it our purpose to do just the opposite and not mind our own business. As a matter of fact, we've taken not minding our own business to new levels, where we've ignored everything that's come across the southern border now for 2 years. And we've got 10 million illegal aliens at least to show for it. So we've mastered not minding our own business. It's become an art form in the United States. And we've sent $154 billion to Ukraine. We're not sure why. Well, we are sure why, but nobody wants to talk about it in public. And that is because at least 10% of that comes back to the counties around, the wonderful counties around D.C., where people are working from home and not coming into the district, right?
Yeah, and they don't even make 2 batches of chicken before 11:45, so there's nothing warm. It's terrible.
It's terrible?
It's terrible.
Well, okay. Well, it's terrible. Speaking of something else, if we have nothing else that we can't save until we talk a little bit about foreign policy, if you want to talk about something else that's terrible in the district, the Eccles Mariner building on Constitution Avenue would rank right up there, I think, in terms of something in D.C. That's terrible, and that's the home of the Federal Reserve. And Federal Reserve, drum roll, had a meeting today and blinked. Basically blinked and gave the market what the market had been begging for. And they didn't raise interest rates today. I've heard it described a couple different ways. They skipped, they paused,
balked.
They balked, take a base, but they didn't do anything except jawbone like sons of bitches afterwards, trying to tell we're still watching. Inflation is not where we want it to be, and just because we didn't do anything this meeting doesn't mean we won't do anything next meeting or whatever. It is interesting. They polled the voting members of the Federal Open Market Committee who make that decision. And 13 of the 19, indicated that they were ready to do at least 2 and some of them 3 additional interest rate increases between now and the end of the year. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. And they sure talked a good game about, vigilant, hawkish view. We're watching, inflation. We're watching you, sort of stuff. But we'll see what happens. There's a lot of folks on the street that are not convinced.
And this is the same week when Yellen is discussing the U.S. dollar coming off of being a reserve currency. For the first time, they're messaging that the U.S. dollar coming off a reserve currency is kind of a natural thing. It's happening, but it's just beginning to happen.
It's just gravity. It's a natural. It's organic.
But it's interesting that they were adamantly screaming about this. I mean, I think we've been talking about this for 2 years now.
Yep.
And now adamantly, oh no, but all of a sudden, well, it's kind of the natural thing. It's science, right? It's just going to occur, and it's normal and natural, and you can't say anything about it, or you're a crazy bigot. The problem is we've been pointing out the fact that they're undermining the dollar for years, and here we are, right? We're in this massive failure of the tool set. They don't have the tools to manage what they've been doing. Quite tragic.
No, they don't have the tools. And as a matter of fact, as part of that testimony, a number of members of Congress were sort of browbeating her by saying that the Treasury had to run an exercise and be prepared and show that they are prepared to mop up the wet cleanup if the Chinese were to dump all their Treasury holdings overnight one day, like in a run up to or response to something in Taiwan. And the look on Janet Yellen's face was pride. I mean, she aged 10 years in 10 seconds, and sort of got beat up on this. And so she's probably wondering why she took this job in the Biden administration. She could have been at Berkeley writing a book about how she was the greatest Fed chairperson and the first female Fed chairperson. Instead, she's, walking around trying to figure out where Joe's diapers are from time to time. And it can't be fun if you're Janet Yellen. And I would think that Jamie Dimon watches this with great interest, because he's been talked about as A, either running for president, or B, being the Secretary of the Treasury. And if I were the CEO, even with the Epstein settlement, if I were the CEO of JP Morgan and Company, there's no way I would go work for the government. That whole Goldman Sachs service thing is good for Goldman Sachs, but if I ran JP Morgan, I wouldn't do that either. So, I mean, it's...
there's an interesting comment here from Rick. The fact that his credit union didn't pause his lock, right? 8.5%. I mean, so what's going on now is they're telling you it's not a problem, and these rates are going to keep ticking. And real rates, real money, getting debt or servicing debt is going to get very difficult for the individual. And then the next step in this process is it gets very difficult for the Fed. It gets very difficult for the Treasury. And they're not even going to pretend. They're going to call crisis on this stuff at some point, and we're going to have to underwrite that.
Again, son of TARP.
Exactly. Da-da-da. One more time.
Son of TARP.
The son of TARP. Exactly. They'll get a couple guys from Goldman. They'll come in, write something up. Everybody will go, oh, thank God it's here. We can point a finger at someone else. And lo and behold.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and everybody's now caught on to the fact that we're going to have some commercial real estate problems. And everybody's talking about how this is going to, destroy the economy. Look, guys, in my lifetime, and I'm gonna apply this to the Chinese economy as well. In my lifetime, we have lived through the disappearance of the savings and loan industry, right? the savings and loan industry, which was a bedrock. I mean, everybody forgets about In a Wonderful Life. It wasn't the bank that Jimmy Stewart was running. It was a savings and loan, as I recall, or a building and loan, right? And so everybody had a savings book back when I was a kid. I know that is a long time ago, but if you're confused about what that means, ask your grandparents. And savings and loans were banks were hoity-toity. Nobody had a bank account. They were at the savings and loan and or the credit union once the credit unions came about. And that entire industry got bastardized and disappeared overnight into a subsidiary of the Commerce Department called the Resolution Trust Corporation, and we survived that. Some people made a lot of money out of that as they sold off assets for pennies on the dollar to politically connected folks. And then fast forward a couple decades, and we went through the great financial crisis when the entire banking system was on, and I'll leave long-term credit alone.
That's my favorite story.
when all the Nobel laureates got fat-tailed, and everybody had to meet again in the basement of the Fed. We know how to deal with these issues, and these issues, and particularly in the real estate market now more than anything, take years to unwind. Okay. We have built in response to the great financial crisis, we have built a literal purgatory where assets go wait to see if they're going to go to heaven or hell. And that's the commercial loan servicing industry. So that when banks and others can't figure out what to do with an asset, or they can't take the charge to capital in order to sell it, or there's nobody out there that wants to buy it, then they move it over into the hands of a loan servicer. And it literally is like being in purgatory. You're not sure if you're alive or dead. You're not sure if you're coming or going. You're not sure if you're going up or down. But things become stasis, okay? And you play for time. And we've got the tools and the technology and the attitude to take all the commercial office space they're talking about in this context and stick it in purgatory for 3 to 5 years. And then again, somebody's going to come in, if you know how to play the game, somebody's going to come in and buy that stuff for pennies on the dollar and make a bloody fortune. So, and the Chinese have watched all that since the Resolution Trust Corporation, and they've got their own shtick in terms of, how they're going to handle their real estate issues. So I don't think any economy is going to die from real estate itis on our watch, because ultimately they're assets. They're real assets. They have real value. It's fungible. It may not be what the market has it marked at a particular time, but they're also able to be repurposed. And there's always going to be capital that wants to look. Our office building in DC, when I ran a company called Washington Equity Partners, we had put it in DC at 14th and I, Jim, for reference, right? You were at G today, 14th and G.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, at 14th and I, Manulife owned the building, and then the building got sold, right? So this was 1993-ish, right? The building got sold and DC. It used to be DC real estate prices were a completely different thing in the marketplace, because foreign money, if it wanted exposure to U.S. real estate, the first stopping point was D.C. because it's the capital, right? And there was always foreign demand. Well, the Marcos family bought our building, and I was just tangentially aware. We didn't own the building; we were just a tenant. But we were tangentially involved in the conversation, and they paid a price that was 2.5 times the highest price per square foot for an office building ever in DC up until that point. And everybody said, well, why would they do that? And Jim, what's the answer? Why would they do that?
There are two purposes. They're either parking money or they bought it from themselves.
Could have been. You could do both. Yeah, they just wanted money out of the Philippines because, and this is what's interesting, 4 years later, Senator Bai, who was the name partner in Bai Connaughton, who was one of the biggest tenants in the building, and I had to go talk to the Marcoses about trying to get back some of them hundreds of millions and billions of dollars that the Philippine government said that they stole from them. And the resolution of that building was part of that process. But it was
the identifiable asset.
The identifiable asset, along with shares of San Miguel. And those of you who've ever been to the Southeast Asia, you probably know San Miguel. It's a very fine beer.
Tunay na lalaki. San
Exactly.
Miguel.
Exactly. It's a rice beer, so if you like rice beer, it's pretty darn good.
I like rice beer, Stan.
So do I. Asahi, Ichiban. Anyhow, we're way afield from the Federal Reserve, but the point is that our government, and don't tell me that the Fed's not an arm of the government, because it is. Our government is trying to land this economy on us as a soft landing, and they've got Wall Street believing that they're going to land it as a soft landing. But these are the same people who 60 days ago thought there were going to be 3 interest rate cuts by year end. That was what was priced into their pricing model when Barron's came out on Sunday last and said, it's a new bull market. And so I think that all of this is a pump and dump operation by professionals on Wall Street who are looking to try to get out of their positions by running up the stock market and driving up sort of retail investors by talking about a soft landing and taking a pause and one thing and another. But bear in mind, and Rick, I'm looking at you if you're concerned about your credit union, how they're pricing your lock. The Fed itself said today that they think that they will be at 5.6% as a Fed funds rate by the end of the year. That's up 60 basis points from today, which is 5%. So that's at least a couple of interest rate increases, probably July and then September, which are the next 2 meetings. And they think unemployment's going to be at about 4.1, 4.2%, which is significantly up from the current 3.7. And so if you flow all that through your model of the economy, there's some stuff that's going to break in that period of time. And here's the kicker. They don't think that their measure of inflation is going to move that much, despite that, by now and the end of the year. They use something called the PCE deflator. And this is the other thing you need to be mindful of, and that is if you don't like the inflation numbers, you just figure out a new way to calculate it and take out the stuff that's making it uncomfortable for you. That's how we get to core versus headlines, CPI, which is Consumer Price Index. That's how we've gotten out to core versus headlines, PCE, for the Fed. And if that doesn't work, they'll just do what they did, and they take out real estate pricing in the PCE deflator. So some way or another, they got to be able to talk about inflation being at 2% in a way that they can keep a reasonably straight face when they do so.
The joys of modern monetary theory.
It is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So that's what's going on with the Federal Reserve. If you're in your money market fund, you probably want to stay there for a while until this sorts itself out. If you're in the market, I just tell you to be careful, because the performance of this market, the quote new bull market, has been pretty narrow. It's been back to sort of the FANG trade, the top 10 or so tech oriented stocks, and you're not seeing much catch up with cyclicals and other companies as well. So yeah, Peter Provenzano, what they're saying is that if there's a recession, the Fed now thinks it'll be in 24 if it happens. If it doesn't, it'll be a soft landing. And I can tell you that one of the other things that keeps Janet Yellen up at night is yakking at Jay Powell to make sure that he doesn't crash the economy on Joe Biden's watch.
That's it. So the longer they pretend to push it off, the more they can blame Trump.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in their minds, if they can make it happen during the first 4 years, they can. Oh, Trump set us up. It was so awful. And I think we're kind of on that policy now, which is, keep
You
it
know,
on the
I
tippy
I
edge.
I don't know that I think though, Jim, I think they figured out that they're far enough away from Trump's policies that they own this.
Yeah.
Their fingerprints are all over it. I mean, they've printed $6 trillion,
I'd
right?
like to think that, Stan, but I'm never shocked these days.
Well, so the question becomes not whether or not they're going to say it. The question becomes, are there enough people in the voting public that will believe it? And there, in that instance, I all bets are off. I've seen the American people in the last 2.5, 3 years, well, since COVID, swallow more bullshit than I would have thought possible. No, I'm serious. I mean,
No,
I
I,
really
I'm
am.
I'm laughing because I agree. It's
Um,
quite staggering.
I mean, I can't even make a list. You can't even swing a stick around and point at enough stuff that if you said to me that the American people would give credence to these things, I would have said you're crazy. So it's maybe the Democrats understand the American populace as it's constituted today far better than us boomers, who may be past it at this particular.
Well, this is something that Watcher and I were talking about before we came on the air, is their ability to surveil us. And there's a bunch of stuff floating around on the internet today because clearly somebody's decided to report on it. But their ability to surveil us and just have behavioral data on the herd is unsurpassed, right? It doesn't have to be done by a lettered agency. It's done in private, and they just contract for it. So they have us from the standpoint of studying us and being able to predict behavior. So we have a limited ability to think autonomously, and they're ahead of us on predicting what we will do given our historical behaviors, right? And their ability to real-time monitoring now through private entities is pretty much unsurpassed, right? So instead of like China, where the government controls everything, they have a series of these, private companies that offer these services. So it's going to be an interesting couple of years as the U.S. citizens come to grips with the fact that they're clearly understood by the entities that run our country.
Yeah,
Whether it's the banks or the government entities. And it's not a paranoia. It's just watch and learn, right?
true.
Let's
True.
see how they handle it. Let's see if they're
So
good stewards.
so this is why, and I'm going to say it again. If you're wondering about this and you're wondering where this leads, and I don't do this very often, but this show really has been poignant, and it's allowed me to point people at it because it really does, I think, a decent job of explaining why there's risks around these parameters and how it can come to be. But watch Rabbit Hole on Paramount Plus.
Yeah,
It's
good
got
show.
Kiefer Sutherland in it. So if you liked 24 or some of the other stuff he's been in, it's pretty easy to watch. But it is ripped from the headlines, boys and girls, around this stuff, and it's done in an entertaining way. It's not like you're watching some dry documentary. It's got a pretty good cast in it. It's got some humor in it. But ultimately, in the first season, it runs you right up to this point where, a bad actor has come to the point where he's got control over, in something called the Privacy Protection Act, which they managed to get passed, which gave 2 or 3 companies access to all personal data on all Americans by Facebook and Twitter and this, that, and the other thing. All the stuff that we take for granted couldn't possibly hurt us. It's nice and fuzzy. We all waste a lot of time on them. And it talks about how they can manipulate folks. And there's one great scene where the bad actor, call him the Soros character or whoever you want to call him, in this instance, literally blackmails a security guard in real time with access to this guy's data on the phone. I mean, it's mind-boggling. It's staggering, but it's possible, and it's only going to become more possible in the context of, there was the companion piece to this story is the one that talks about the fact that the internet backbone's been hacked by the NSA for years, and that everything that's ever been said or done is stored in a building someplace in Maryland, and they've got it, but it's so the data is so massive that they can't figure out how to access it all. But when we get to quantum computing, they will be able to access it all in seconds and organize it and collate it and use it to do exactly what we're talking about. So I don't want to sound like I've got a tinfoil hat on, because I don't. This is real. And you just it's one more thing you need to be mindful of in terms of your data is not safe. And if your data is not safe, under certain circumstances, you're not safe. So, anybody you guys want to call me crazy or what?
Well, I've called you crazy for decades, but
am I wrong?
No.
Okay.
No. Stan has a big mustache.
The chair is against the wall.
The watcher chair is against the wall. Yeah,
exactly.
Sit back, watch it, be aware of it. Watch the interest rates go up. That's how they're paying for this whole gamut. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
By the way, SF Peaks. It's in Utah. Well, yes, that is where the new facility is, and it's a Lulu, baby. It's a biggie. So they're everywhere, and they're spending a hell of a lot of money on that infrastructure. So, yep, there's got to be a reason they're spending money on the infrastructure, SF Peaks, right?
Where in Utah, just out of curiosity, Watcher?
Just outside of Salt Lake City. It's not that far.
That's because they have to recruit humans to actually go there. And so you need decent housing and school districts in order to recruit.
It's one of the towns south of Salt Lake City.
And then the next question is, where do they get the cooling water?
And who's the responsible agency?
So the state, like they actually, like, this is funny you mentioned that, because it's actually been an avenue of attack by many people, because they are taking a lot of water from an intensely water starved area, and it's the state just giving it to them at regular meter prices.
Up till this year, it was incredibly starved, and then this year they've got a lot of snow. But yeah, it was interesting they chose the place. They chose it for various stability reasons and other crossovers. But yeah, there are a few of these sites that have gone in and they've spent a huge amount of money, and bless their hearts for protecting national security.
Mm-hmm.
So this is NSA?
According to Senator Mike Lee, he's responsible for that, according to Rick.
No, but the agency is the national securities?
I think it's all the above, Steve.
Yeah, I think it's multi.
It's all the above.
There you go.
At least they're moving west. You're not alone. You mountain people.
Oh, the outpost.
Well,
that's a different thing than moving the.
So I'll take you back. I'll take you back to episode 2 of the Privy Council, when one of the takeaways of that episode is the more complex a system, the easier it is to disrupt. So.
Absolutely. The question is, Watcher, why didn't they just say they're going to move it to Dugway?
If I had my guesses,
the area sell, huh?
No. The area that they picked is actually very strategically picked defensively to be able. It's kind of the only thing out there where it's at, and so it gives them a lot of opportunities to pick people off before they get there.
A fisherman always sees another fisherman from afar. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of money was spent on that. Let's hope they make good use of it.
I can't believe you said that with a straight face.
No, it's okay. That's why I don't have my
Oof.
camera on. It's, I'm grinning like a stuck fish.
All right, so that's kind of where we are from a Federal Reserve and to some degree from an economic perspective. If you'd like us to talk a bit more about sort of economics, we will do so. If not, we're going to move to foreign policy, which is the other polar aspect of this. And actually, I'm going to switch this up if I can, Washer. If you can go to that piece from the Wall Street Journal that I sent you about Biden's rapprochement with Iran, because I think that puts that other piece in greater context. And I'm not going to read this. I'll just tell you what's in it because I frankly I can't sit and listen to somebody read me stuff. So we're back to talking about pallets of cash and the Iranians. And
The adults are back in town. So.
Yeah, we're back, baby. And so that's basically what we're doing. We've got secret talks going on in Oman with the Iranians, and this is all about trying to put something that they can call a win in foreign policy on the board before the election. So in that context, we're prepared to get. I don't know who we still have as prisoners held by Tehran. I think that one FBI guy they've proven is dead, the one that was captured on one of the islands in the Hormuz Straits. So I'm not sure who's still left in Iran for us to get back, but we're basically giving money to the Iraqis to pay for oil and gas that goes back to Iran. We're doing a number of things here that will send pallets of cash to the regional hegemon, Iran, who has just about created the Shia Crescent from the Med all the way to to the Indian Ocean. And I, for the life of me, can't figure out why we're doing this. So I'm going to ask Jim and or Washer to tell me why is it a good thing now with the Iranians, by most estimates, literally weeks away from a nuclear weapon, should they choose to do it. And that's assembly time. That's not centrifuge time. Why are we doing this?
Well, I mean, if you want me to be really super cynical, I would, not that I think this is true, but like the most cynical take on this is, oh yeah, we'll give you pallets of cash. Just do the thing we want. Yeah, they're going to get bombed anyway, so who gives a shit? Because if they really do develop a nuke, the Israelis will not allow that to stand, as they've proven multiple times. Joe, welcome.
It's Satan's auditor.
It certainly is. Certainly is. More to come. More to come.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that.
I honestly just had this exchange. They said, this over here is Sarah. And I said, that's not your name. And they looked at me and I'm like, I'm sorry. Hi, Sarah. Because this dude's name was clearly Steven, but whatever.
Oh boy.
Better you than me, Joe.
So Joe, do you like go home and burn incense for like 5 or 6 hours after you?
I was going to ask both you and Jim. Like, do you have a decontamination method, both mental and physical, to cleanse yourself?
Yeah, I do go home and take a shower for sure.
Yeah. So my father warned me when I went away to school. He said, if you're with a woman you don't know, wash with dark soap. So that was my warning as a young man going into the world. So always be prepared. You're a Marine, Joe. You know how to do that.
Hey, listen, the best advice I ever got before going into some parts of the Western Pacific was pat them down first.
Exactly.
Oh, you've been to Thailand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or the Philippines, one or the other.
Yeah, that's true too.
So
I don't like to pick on the Philippines. I have fond memories of the Philippines. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think Stan and I both have fond memories of the Philippines, but we moved in different circles, I think, at times. And we actually did have decent hotels to go back to most of the time. we're talking about some edgy stuff today, so it's good to have you, Joe.
So anyhow,
I'm glad to be here.
You came back just at the point where we're talking about the fact that we're going to money whip the Iranians again for captives, but we won't negotiate with terrorists. So that's kind of where we are. This is just one of the series of sort of foreign policy takes that we're going to try to talk a little bit about this evening, and this is the one that I wanted to start with because it is so muscle memory from the Obama administration that it puts paid to any speculation that Biden is not just a puppet for Obama. I mean, this is pure JCPOA stuff, except we're not doing anything. We've dropped our sights to the point where we're not even talking to them about their nuclear program anymore. That's fait accompli. We're just trying to put some sort of a half-assed win on the board for the elections.
So that we need a press release with the word Iran in it.
Exactly. So they can cut a couple of campaign commercials saying, look what we did in the Middle East. That's all it is.
Aren't these the guys who've been surrounding tankers in Hormuz for the last couple of weeks? And there's like a tit for tat exchange of tanker seizures.
This is really just the way they operate. They're just trying to get more out of us. Every time they want something, they seize a ship.
Yeah, the question is who's in the middle taking the vig on whatever's going on the side. That's the part.
That's where, Jim, the answer to that is pretty straightforward. And where is the meeting taking place? Oman.
Yeah,
Oman has been the cutout for us in that part of the world, particularly with the Iranians and to some extent with the Taliban, for quite some time.
Well, this is where we need to drag Chet back on stage here and ask him about the Omanis. But I just sense that there's a very big shift going on in logistics, right? It's who controls and who pays. And this discussion about the dollar being undermined and the change in how people allocate capital and pay for commodities, I think it's going to have long-reaching effects on the ability of the U.S. to assert power, both financial and military. If you take the financial tool away or you diminish it, we end up in a position where we're just left with the spear. And it creates a problem for us because we're always trying to say that we're leading with, openness, legalistic approaches, democracy. And those things are undermined when you don't have a control of your currency and you don't have control over the currency being used in trade. And I just get a feeling the Iranians are aware we're kind of at the edge of our ability to buy them off. And so they're hoping for one last deal. Just kind of my instinct. Because they're making a hell of a lot of money being the intermediary for weapons. And I think the Chinese are going to probably end up cutting them out because there's going to be no shame in going direct to the Russians. Right?
You're right. And it won't be long before a lot of these cutouts are not going to be necessary.
Exactly.
And the Chinese are going to tell Zelensky to pound sand about bitching about Chinese components and Iranian-made whatever.
It'll become meaningless.
It's going to be meaningless. Yeah.
And then they'll start opening the maquiladoras in Belarus.
In Belarus.
And they'll say to the Europeans, if you want to buy cheap shit from us, you got to buy it through Belarus. I just kind of get a feeling that the Iranians know this is the last time to take the hit.
Yeah, I think you may be right. You may be onto something there. So anyhow, this is our latest capitulation to Iran. This is one of a series of things that we're sort of not doing well in the region. And then if we go back to that video, let's talk about the response that this is. I've forgotten which Iranian diplomat, but this is Honduras. This is Nicaragua. This is Nicaragua. Nice building they got there. And this is the arrival of, I think, the president of Iran in Nicaragua.
They're messing.
Yeah, that's Raisi coming in. Yeah,
they're messing with us just because they can.
Well, we've talked about this before, but it's probably not. It's probably not. It's probably not a bad thing to. Looks like my cousin. Probably not a bad thing.
I was going to say that, but thought it would be too insulting.
The it's probably it's probably not repetitive to talk about the fact that the Iranians are so deeply embedded in Venezuela. That because I think yesterday there was a picture of Maduro and Raisi or somebody looking at some Iranian stuff that, you know, the 42nd imam's right hand and a sword and this and that and all that stuff. But the point is that the Iranians, as well as the Chinese, and to a lesser extent the Russians have sort of backed off on stuff in other than they play footsie with Maduro from time to time. But the Iranians and the Chinese really have made inroads in Latin America, and it's not out of the kindness of their hearts. They're not running USAID programs. They're not teaching people how to write good legislation in democratically elected assemblies. They're there for real stuff and for real reasons, and we are largely oblivious to it.
And I think you're seeing, too, a power struggle between Maduro and Lula to decide who gets to be the regional manager for the Chinese.
Yeah, that's a good call, Joe. I don't doubt that there's a little bit of friction between those two in that regard, and so we'll have to see how that plays out in the next couple of years. I think there's enough to go around. Because there's going to be a lot of Chinese activity in that part of the world, but hot Latin dictators will do what hot-blooded Latin dictators do. So
I think you'll see too a bigger push for this Mercosur idea of a bloc similar to the EU south of Panama. I think that you'll really see that flesh out and become more than just economics. I really think you'll see some sort of a military alliance come out of it.
Yeah, you could very well. I think the gating event for that is going to be cleaning up and agreeing upon the agenda for the BRICS countries, because I think there's going to be two different levels of membership in BRICS. Right? There's going to be what I'll call the Security Council level membership or the top tier first class level membership in BRICS, and then there's going to be the junior sort of General Assembly membership within BRICS. And I think Argentina is such an economic basket case that people want to put a lot of padding around that before they fully integrate it into either Mercosur or the BRICS situation. So I think they may be playing AAA ball in Argentina for a while. We'll see. And in terms of military alliance, yeah, maybe. I think there's going to be a lot of Chinese influence in that. But I don't think the Chinese are dumb enough to do what we've done with OTAN and provide security guarantees for those folks, right? Because they'll swap leaders out just because. Anyhow, that's kind of where we are on Iranian aspects. Jim, I'm going to let you take the next one, which is Blinky finally got his meeting in Beijing. Okay, he's had a dedicated suitcase packed to go to Beijing now for 70 days, 75 days ish.
I think you should show up and say, "Oh, thanks you, boss."
Yeah. So, but the price of him getting the meeting was getting dressed down on the telephone by the Chinese foreign minister and told that the U.S. had to take responsibility for improving relationships and had to show respect. Jim, can you translate that for the folks at home as to what that means from a Chinese perspective?
Blinken has no clothes. I mean, this is a sad attempt to, again, get a pelt on the wall for something that's totally meaningless at this point.
The Chinese aren't going to give that to him.
Yeah, it has 100% to do with just being inept. They haven't been able to put anything on the board.
Well,
And
Blinken's been in a lot of meetings lately, and the one prior to this was in Riyadh, where his good friend MBS neglected to put up an American flag behind him as they took the obligatory pictures, sitting in the Saddam chairs.
yeah, this is a message from the people who relied on us for a long time, which is you guys just got to do better, because we're just not doing well. But it's been a long time.
Do you think that's the message, or do you think the message is just pound sand?
From the Chinese, it's pound sand.
Yeah.
From our allies who are very fearful about the direction they've chosen, because that they're wringing their hands in the back rooms because they're very comfortable not having to spend money on their own defense. Yeah, there's a lot of anxiety out there, but the Chinese, we talked about this a year and a half ago. I mean, we're at the point now where I just don't think the Chinese give a shit. They're done with us. We've proven ourselves not even to be a worthy adversary because we just kind of bumble along. And, my whole concern vis-a-vis China for probably 5 or 10 years is there's going to be an error. People would ask me 10 years ago, how does this play out? And I said, inexperience of a Chinese commander of a vessel or something, there's an egregious error, right? And we've gone, the EP3 thing, we've gone through some of these errors. And when you start having less and less respect,
I don't know, Jim. Watching that video at the outset, they seem to have their shit pretty tight.
The go-go boots.
Yeah, the go-go boots. I mean,
the go-go boots. Yeah, the tall northern girls in go-go boots. They've always had that.
You from Liaoning province, right?
Yeah, you're wheat-fed northern girls. I just get the feeling the Chinese are done with us. We went from being this kind of managed inconvenience to them, and now we're just almost irrelevant, which is we're militaristic. They're going to try to make us look like a threat. They're going to play the nationalism card, get everybody riled up about how bad the Americans are. And I think they're done trying to placate us. So Blinken's an inconvenience to them. So they're not even going to pretend to respect us, which is too bad, because we had the ability to transition to kind of a respected adversary. And I think it's been squandered over the Obama years in numerous ways. And we've talked about those.
Yeah,
failure to engage. We've just suffered a terrible couple decades of failure to engage.
So, and then Blinken goes from there to London, from Beijing to London.
Because that's the only thing that's really gone well in the last couple months is the bilaterals with the UK. But the bilaterals with the UK should have occurred in Obama or Trump.
Yeah, they should have. But I'm not so sure that the UK is maintaining its relevance. So, I mean, it's Sunak is not doing well, and I just don't think that I don't, and for Biden's Secretary of State to be sort of leaning on a rehash of the special relationship, that is not Obama 3 policy. You have to remember that.
So that should have been done at Brexit, right? When Brexit occurred,
right,
and the UK reset, that was the chance for this cross-Atlantic kind of redo, kind of a modern entente cordiale with the Europeans, where the UK and the US went, hey, we're going to do this perfect bilateral, right? And create a new economic model. We've resisted that since that occurred.
Well, there is
shame on the UK.
And I'm sorry I didn't bring it along for this. And I've read it. It's not particularly enlightening. But we do have the fig leaf for that sort of rapprochement with Sunak. There is a white paper that's been put out by the White House that is going to be the topic of conversation for both Blinken and Sunak, and I'll post a link to I'll tweet it on Twitter, um, because if you read it, and I'm old enough, Jim's old enough. You read economic documents during the Reagan administration. You read economic documents during the 90s in terms of the great sort of expansion of globalism with the United States and one thing and another. And that even goes to, foreign aid sort of constructs. The language of this framework of agreement for how the UK and the US are going to capture the high ground over the next 20 years from a number of different perspectives is so rife with the platitudes of the woke society that as you read it, you have a hard time not snickering, saying, come on, this is never going to work. It is a perfect ESG document, which means it will do nothing, it will accomplish nothing, it will set both countries back 5 years.
Yeah, it manifests the concept of economic friction. It will put friction on everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how they've measured themselves. That's why they're traveling the globe looking to have conversations and make more paper. I mean, as the Japanese would say, it's time to make document. Let's make document.
Yeah.
Have meetings, make document. You talked about this earlier in the day, Stan. They're looking to put meetings up as accomplishments. Meetings are not accomplishments. These things take a lot of work, and you've got to coordinate the economy behind the agreements, and then get capital investment into new infrastructure and to new productivity. And I'm just not seeing anybody looking at the long game.
I'm smiling because, Mighty Mouse is just around the corner. You should know this.
Exactly.
Because the Senate today, in a groundbreaking move, affirmed Jared Bernstein as the new chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors.
Oh, joy.
Jared has been Joe Biden's bag man for 30 years. Okay. And when they couldn't do anything with him in the Obama administration, they made him the economic advisor to the vice president, which I think was the first time that the vice president ever had an economic advisor, was during the Obama administration, because they didn't know what to do with Jared. Jared was an embarrassment, but Joe wanted him around, so they created a position. Well, finally, 2.5 years into the Biden administration, Jared Bernstein, labor economist, almost labor economist in a UK sort of explanation of a labor economist, is now finally the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, because they couldn't find anybody once they got rid of Brian Deese, right? Nobody else wanted the job.
Nobody's stupid enough to step into the breach.
Nobody wanted the job. Larry Summers says, no, I don't think
I'm not going there.
I don't think so. And so they said, well, what about Jared? He knows how to handle Joe. And that's exactly what they've done. So be on the lookout for circular logic writ large on jobs report days and other days where they trundle the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors onto the driveway in front of the White House and shout questions at him. It's going to be tremendous. You're going to love it. I can't wait. So that's kind of where we are.
So they got him with one vote. He got through.
Yeah, he got through. Oh
my God! So Manchin gave him like 12 hours of opposition.
Well, no, not really. I think they figured they didn't really want to waste time on a lot of this being contested at this point. And Jared is a known, in Rumsfeld terms, he's a known. Okay, he's been around forever, and he's a moron, but he's Joe's moron, and I think they just sort of said, well, the president has the right to pick the morons he wants to work with, i.e. Trump, and we got other things to do. We're not going to waste time on this. So they confirmed it.
Your senator was good today. He said, meanwhile, I'm undecided. I've just, quote, got to check it out. So this is Tester.
Yeah. Well, Tester has started. The gun has fired. The court has dropped. he has started his reelection race in Montana, and Gianforte and the GOP, the long knives are out for John. They think he's vulnerable this time. I don't think so. I think Tester is pretty smart. He's a dirt farmer. He represents a lot of dirt farmers in eastern Montana, and I think he's going to be tough to beat. And he's the former chairman of the Democratic Senatorial Reelection Committee.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of favors to call on when it comes time to raise money, and I think he's going to be hard to beat. I really do. And he's, you know what? He's not a bad guy. He really isn't. I mean, he has never lost some of that dirt farmer heritage. But when he gets out over his skis, it's because he's got to kowtow to the Democratic Party power structure. Which, speaking of, in an object lesson of why we continue to get our ass kicked in the VC GOP, the vote apparently to censure Adam Schiff, we're probably going to lose that in the House. Because did we lose it? I lost track.
I think we lost it.
Because the Democrats voted in lockstep together, and 4 was the last number I heard. There had to be 5. 5 Republicans chose not to censure Adam Schiff, and that speaks for itself. I don't think I have to belabor that point for anybody to understand that. It is. So when people tell me we're going to vote our way out of this, I just point to stuff like that and say, no, you're not.
Man, we never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity, right?
Absolutely. It really is. And I do think I coined this, and I'm not breaking my arm, patting myself on the back, but it really is a very apt analogy. And the whole Vichy GOP thing is, every day becomes more and more relevant. I mean, we are a government of occupation, and not.
We also love to show how magnanimous we are, knowing full well the other side would never reciprocate. So there's no point in doing it.
Right. So here's a question, and I see Jay Sup just tuned in, and he makes a comment that says meetings are not achievements. We've talked a little bit about that. I don't want to out anybody or dox anybody in the chat, but if you're a sales professional, okay, and you make a living as a salesperson, do you get paid for setting up meetings, or do you get paid for closing transactions? If there's anybody that, and you don't have to super chat it, to just
Coffee's only for closers.
Yeah, coffee's for closers. So if there's somebody who makes their living in a sales function as a professional on commission or what have you, when you turn in your activity reports on a weekly or monthly or whatever it is basis, do you get paid for RGMs, real good meetings? No? Yes? Maybe so? I can't believe there's not somebody in our chat that isn't.
That was good, actually.
Huh?
That was good. You get paid for really good meetings.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. Because that's kind of where we are from a foreign policy perspective. All right. Nobody wants to say. Yeah. Nobody wants to own up to it. Look, I mean, it's you can make a lot of money in a sales capacity if you're good at what you're doing. If you've got the gift of the gab and you know what you're doing. Yeah, J-Sup says he gets paid for deliverables. Well, but that's a little. I mean, RGMs can be a deliverable. My experience has always been, and I've managed a couple of folks in sales functions in my life, and you don't get paid for
you don't get paid until you don't get paid generally till well after the check has cleared the bank account.
Correct.
The Scarlet R, revenue.
That's exactly right. But we're rewriting capitalism along with modern monetary theory. So I guess maybe RGMs are going to become almost like a baseball statistic that you can't understand. Wins above replacement. What the hell is that? Wins above replacement. You got any baseball fans in the chat? Probably not, because basically baseball fans are people that are my age at this particular point.
My dad and my brothers are all baseball fans, and given what's happening to the great sport of baseball right now, I'm happy I'm not. They're all Dodgers fans.
Oh Lord.
Yeah.
Oh Lord. All right. So
The only real sport is played on ice.
yeah, I'll take a little issue
Curling?
with you there. I'll take a little bit of issue with you there. And I'm a hockey fan, but I think that lacrosse is a great game. I think more people should play lacrosse. And I think rugby is a real game.
I'll also put water polo out there, but I think more people should play water polo, because if more people played water polo, we'd have less people.
Listen, rugby and water polo are just hockey, but not on ice.
Well, I think you need to go burn some incense, pal. I think you're still under the influence of the satanic influence of. Can I say the name?
Probably.
Can I say the name?
Well, no,
You
no.
can now. And now Bill's sent, so
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I won't. I'll let you deal with that the way you want to.
Listen, don't let your kids buy stuff from Zoomies. It's literally a satanic company. Horrible. We'll be talking more about that in the days to come.
Okay, I don't want to steal your thunder. I just want people to be aware that when you drop it, that this is the really real, right?
Not only that, they support domestic terrorism, and I'll explain that. But I'm going to probably package it all up in something, and we'll chat about it on one of these.
Ooh, editing work.
Nice. So
I like that. Speaking
all
of
right.
somebody who's under the influence, do we want to talk about a certain mayor?
Well, let's do that. Let's talk about Mayor Suarez from Miami, who is who came out today and said, "Say hello to my little friend," who's going to run for president. Now, if you're rummaging through the data banks to try to figure out who the hell is Mayor Suarez, you're not alone. But I think he wants to capture the Hispanic lane in the Republican Party. He is a Republican. He is the mayor of Miami, and he is well liked in Miami. Yeah, Rick's right about that. He is well liked in Miami, but I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. He's got more street cred than Asa Hutchinson, that's for sure, right? He's probably got more street cred than Vivek Ramaswamy Wamalami, and some of the other folks that have thrown their hat. I'd vote for him before I'd vote for Nikki Haley, and I don't know him from Adam. But it's going to be interesting to see how well Mayor Suarez does, or he may just be, sort of seeding the mine for the next time around. You got to start somewhere sometime. So that's kind of where we are. But the notion that he's going to be a force in the Republican Party, he's not. His last name's not Bush, right? There is a Bush who is Hispanic looking, but the Bush name is so tarred that even his lane is cut off at this particular point. So we shall see. And Rick, I'm looking to you, buddy. Anybody in Florida that can speak to the efficacy of why the mayor of Miami? You know what? If I were the mayor of Miami, I wouldn't want to run for president. I got to believe that right now, and Jim, you can speak to this, Miami has become a capital center for all of South America, right?
Anybody with any family money in Latin America has gotten as much of it into Miami as they can.
Exactly. I mean, this is the Emerald City, right? I mean, this is Oz. If you're in Latin America, why would you want to give up being the mayor of Miami? And everything's going right. You got a state government that's got your back. Why the hell would you want to give that up and run for president of the United States in 2024?
I would challenge he's more influential as the mayor of Miami on world events than he would be as the president of the United States.
No question about it. No question about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. watch this space and see. So is it? Are we done in terms of the concept of who's going to be the Democratic nominee? Many of you know what I think, so I'm not going to. I won't. I'm not going to. I'm not going to seed the trap with that. But I mean, do we think that Joe's going to make it all the way?
I'm telling you, it's going to be Newsom Whitmer. I'm telling you.
I don't. I'm not going to. I don't know about Whitmer. You have stronger feelings about Whitmer, but you all know I think that Newsom is going to be the candidate.
Can I offer an interesting third observation? They can get rid of him at any time. They have more than enough equipment, and in fact would be lauded as heroes for doing so.
Right.
I almost question whether the plan is Joe Biden will leave when the economy crashes and they can pin it on him. When the popularity hit is his to take on his way out. So he'll
take the fall, in other words?
Yeah, on his way out.
Well, that's what Lyndon Johnson did on Vietnam, so could very well be.
No, not a bad opportunity.
Could very well be.
Tag it on the old criminal, and then claim he didn't know what he was doing.
What do you do with Kamala Harris?
Hey, hold on there, because you missed one step though, because then you pardon the old boy, because obviously you didn't know what he was doing. He's been out of his mind for years, as his good friend Barry will tell you.
That's how I think it goes. I agree with Watcher on that.
Actually, you let Kamala ride it out. You let her take his position for the last 6 months or so that they can take credit for the first black female president. Then you put your real candidate out there.
Well, I don't know.
None of it sounds good to me.
I think Kamala is a real sticking point. I don't think she was meant to be where she is.
Oh, I think there's more than enough skeletons in the closet to have her shuffle right off as soon as it turns over and pursue a career in another field.
I understand, but that's messy and it's destructive and it takes attention away.
Oh, that doesn't sound like anything Democrats will do these days at all.
but they don't want to do it if they can avoid it. So I think there has to be a quiet sort of exit stage left sort of deal that gets done, and I don't doubt for a minute that she would be amenable to some sort of monetary arrangement. I mean, she's clearly not comfortable in a public setting. I mean, she has no bloody idea what she's doing, and I think she's been painted as so inept that I think she is smart enough to understand that she's got a ticket that she can punch. It may not be the golden ticket, but a silver ticket's probably not a bad idea in this context. In case anybody's wondering, yes, it is time to feed the cat. So sooner or later, I'm going to have to do that. But
well, she gets to become a fellow at Harvard or somewhere and write out her days giving $100,000 speeches, right?
Joe, the last of those positions was just filled by Lori Lightfoot. So I don't know what to tell you.
All she has to do is say Beetlejuice, 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 and the seat is hers.
Imagine being a kid who worked his entire life to get to really advance himself and to really get like absolute perfect grades, makes it all the way through the system, and Lori Lightfoot is your goddamn professor. I would riot.
Yeah.
No, you see, the secret to these professorships is they don't have to teach. They're literally, this is the corner office, windowed office. They put them away. They pay them $400,000 or $500,000 a year. They take some interviews. They get paid by MSNBC to show up.
It used to be that they had to publish, but they don't even have to do that.
They don't even have to do that now. This is stashing people. It's like in Chicago. You've got all the old weathermen who've been put away there. Then those old weathermen begat Obama, and then Obama moves along, and you've had this cluster of urban Marxism that's just become a staple of our universities. It's really rather tragic. Did I say something?
Boy,
I'm sorry.
no, it's just no. It's funny because it ties into a conversation I was having just earlier about the rate at which the universities have seppuku'd their credibility has just been astonishing, just absolutely amazing.
Well, they're also taking down their DEI budgets at a very aggressive rate because I think that they're looking at the internal rate of return, and it really hasn't had the rate of return that they thought they'd get. I'm not sure where they thought they'd get it, but when they had these large DEI budgets, they said, oh, okay, this is a path to nirvana. Now, all of a sudden, they're all backtracking and they're wondering why it's the highest paid sector in their universities. And they're just saying, hey, this is a bad bet. And so after, let's say, 18 to 24 months of the DEI human investment, they're moving away from it super fast.
But don't forget that all of those departments that have been under the DEI thumb have now been utterly destroyed and subverted.
I think they're going to rebound just fine. They're going to go from insane Marxism back to just abject socialism. I think we'll be okay in the universities because they have so much endowment. The ones that don't have good endowments are in trouble.
Indeed, particularly as people decide that they're not going to take out student loans any longer because there's almost no return on doing that, and now that in August, I think it is, that all these folks that have been skating by on deferments of their payments are now going to have to start paying again. And
yep,
it's going to be
painful.
It's going to be eye opening for them and others. So, all right. Let's go around the horn for the good of the Commonwealth. Anything you want to close out with, Jim?
Yeah, I'm just watching our Congress try to figure out what its job is. So I really hope that some of the members of Congress can get back on the horse and actually do what the House is supposed to do and start embarrassing some of the folks in the Senate who've been skating for the last 3 6-year cycles. There's some work to be done in DC, and I'm just not seeing it get done now. So I'm hoping that happens.
We'll spend a minute on that because I think that's a germane point. How do you think that happens?
I think
because I'm gonna run to the end of the tunnel here. From my perspective, I don't see it happening.
No, I haven't seen it happen either.
I think it is the Roman Senate. I think it is the collection of inactivity, but prestige and influence without accountability that they now want it to be.
They still control the budget, but their inability to form an opinion and stand their ground and assert themselves needs to be addressed somehow, because it's the only fire break we have against this absurd spending. And
look, there hasn't been a full slate of appropriation bills passed by the Congress.
Oh, preaching to the converted. I'm wondering,
Clinton administration.
Yeah, I'm wondering if somebody can step up. I don't know. Somebody's going to step up, or the institution itself is going to have to collapse on its own weight.
Well, let's just go through. Let's take the top tier of leaders in both houses. And so Schumer's not going to change anything, right? In the Senate.
Schiff just won a popularity contest.
Yes, let's stay in the Senate for just a moment. Let's take the turtle and just set him aside because he's not long for that position. But the guy who has drafted right behind him with his nose in an indelicate position has been John Thune, and John Thune is as VC GOP as it gets. He's just more quiet about it. He's not Susan Collins loud about it. So I don't see what's going to change in the Senate, regardless of do we win the Senate or do we not win the Senate. The only thing that's important about the Senate from any perspective is what Trump was best at, and that is judicial appointments. That's the only reason to care about the Senate. It used to be treaty approval. We don't do that anymore. So it's judicial appointments. This is the reason to care about the Senate. But the Senate is no longer a brake on adverse outcomes from the House. In some cases, they've outdone the House. And now let's move to the House. Okay. So if you think Speaker Hakeem is going to be a walk in the park, you have not been paying attention. And I'm not pointing at you. I'm just saying you generically. Okay.
I'm not that sensitive, Stan.
Well, I know, but you know, and so, and by the way, I don't want any references to the fact that Jim shows up dressed as Queen Victoria to be a reference that this is some sort of drag reading hour around here. So while I have that on my mind, let's get
I
that
haven't
out of the way.
I haven't had a top job like her.
Okay. But so if you think Speaker Hakeem is going to be anything other than the squad on steroids, you've not been paying attention. And so let's assume that they vacate the speaker's chair, the 15 or 20 guys who didn't want McCarthy in the first place. They vacate the speaker's chair, and let's assume Chip Roy becomes the speaker. He's got 5 votes to work with, guys. That's it. And
No,
as you said, enough Republicans rolled over to sort of give Schiff an out. It's unbelievable to me that happened.
Yeah, the fear I have is that the system is there to perpetuate the system, right?
It's what it's become.
And their loyalty is to the bureaucracy. We'll see what happens. I mean, I think a lot of Americans are aware there's a dysfunction, and it just comes down to how they vote and how they drive their representatives. And we're coming up on an election, and it's going to be it's going to be important.
Look, I'm sorry. I'm usually on the let's maintain optimism side of the fence, but I think we need to be realistic. And you say it matters who they vote, but who are they to vote for that's going to change this?
You got a point. I wish I had the answer, Watcher. I don't know. I'm watching like you guys are.
So we pray for a dark horse.
Yeah, it's the system we have.
But I think that's Joe. What are your thoughts on this? And then I'll try to wrap this up for us.
I think that my thoughts on the rest of the week, I guess. I think you guys are spot on that last issue, absolutely, on the speaker thing. But I think that the thing to watch for is the agitation by the federal government to attempt to turn some sort of a Trump supporter into a terrorist. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean, the entire indictment, the television breathless reporting, almost masturbatory reporting by CNN is meant to try and drive somebody over the edge to do something so they can say, see, Donald Trump did this, or see, those Republicans are all violent. So don't take the bait, but watch for someone, because it's inevitable, to do it, and what sort of a response we get and the second and third order effects from that. I think that's our biggest potential for risk in the future.
Fair enough. Watcher, any thoughts? And then we'll wrap up.
No, just, keep your spirits up. Chins up, boys.
So in addition to some topics which we'll name for next week, I want to carve out some time in next week's show to give you guys sort of a look behind the curtain at what we're doing in terms of distribution for the show, content for the show, some other things that we're going to be doing starting the week after that, the week of the 28th. And we're bringing a whole range of new things to the table. It will take a little bit of time to get them all unrolled, but I want to give you a look down and around the corner at what we're going to be doing with the Privy Council in a way I think that will make it much better. I think much more entertaining, and in a way is also going to make it much more meaningful in terms of some of the things that we all care about, and we'll talk about what the methodology for that will be next week. So stick with us. and I think you'll be pleased about what we have to say next week, and we'll go from there. Rick, yes, I am still working on that map, the national divorce map, and I'm. It's become a little bit of a Michelangelo thing.
Yeah, well, it sounds more like a Jackson Pollock, but
Are you consulting with Sibley on this map?
No, Sibley has lost all credibility with me. I'm sorry.
No, that I'm just wondering about the delay in the map.
No. And by the way, that's funny you should mention that, because I was thinking about this earlier. And Joe, you may remember this. I'm trying to remember. I think it was late December, early January, that to much hubbub and ado, Sibley trumpeted the fact that the sequel was done and in the hands of the publisher. Right? Am I right about that?
No, that is correct. It was December. Yeah.
It was in December. It was still 22, as I recall. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, back in the winter of '02.
Exactly. And so,
but I do know this: he is on his way to an undisclosed location in Utah for some glamping right now. And I said, I hope you can get by spooning without me. And he said he'll.
Well, okay, I wasn't going there. I'm calling into question the veracity of the delivery of this thing to the publisher, and/or wanting to know whether or not the publisher has either defected to China or been hit by a truck or whatever. What is going on with the sequel? At this point, you can talk to Blaine. At this point, the publisher could have rewritten every bloody word in it and still had it done by now. Not to pick an old scab, but I'm just saying.
I'm hopeful.
You're hopeful?
I agree.
Okay.
But he might have to rewrite it with the whole Venezuela thing now, since they're a bigger part of the partnership. So,
well, there you go. Yeah, J-Sub says, see, deliverables. That's exactly right. Deliverables.
No, so the Iranians
cash
in Nicaragua
on the barrelhead.
Iranians in Nicaragua was something he didn't anticipate.
Well, you can't cover all of it. All right, so we'll take that up next week as part of our remit in the context of what you're going to end up with is a Privy Council that's faster, smoother, more entertaining. I will tell you this: there's going to be a lot more music in the production values of the show, because that's something I've wanted to do, and I think we've got a way around things that have been sticking on us. And we are going to be moving to Twitter and Twitter only. I'll reiterate that. I want out of the duopoly that is Rumble and YouTube, because I don't want to be looking over our shoulder. And so we'll look forward to, yes, more entertaining, Mr. Andy Conway, more entertaining, and a wider format of things. Some of this will be pre-recorded, some of it will not. You're just going to get a lot more mismatch out of this stuff. And we hope you'll like it, because we're going to do it one way or the other. But there are some things that we'll talk about from a commercial perspective that I think will make it interesting to you folks at all. So I'll stop there and wish you all a great night, and thank you for joining us. And please join us next week and each week thereafter as we take you on a tour through the Montana Privy Council.